Imagine a single moment, one missile, one strike, that sends shockwaves across continents, ignites global headlines, and places the world on edge. That moment has arrived. An American airbase in Qatar has been targeted, and now the silence that follows is not peace, it's anticipation. The kind that holds its breath before history changes course. This isn't just about war or politics. It's about power, perception, and a president who's never followed the script. What happens next could alter the balance of the Middle East, shake global alliances, and define a legacy already steeped in bold decisions and fierce controversy. In this video, we dive deep layer by layer into the forces shaping what could be one of the most consequential decisions of our time. Stay with us because the next move isn't just his, it's ours to understand. Defining strategy employed by Donald Trump during his presidency in dealing with Iran. This approach emphasized economic, military, and diplomatic measures designed to force Iran into submission, specifically regarding its nuclear program, regional influence, and support for proxy groups. After pulling the United States out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2018, also known as the Iran nuclear deal, Trump imposed a sweeping regime of sanctions that targeted Iran's oil exports, banking system, and critical industries. The idea was to choke Iran's economy to the point where it would either come back to the negotiating table or face collapse. Trump's strategy was rooted in the belief that previous diplomatic efforts were too lenient and allowed Iran to exploit loopholes. His administration believed that only sustained, aggressive pressure could bring about behavioral change in Tehran. This meant not only reinstating sanctions that had been lifted under the Obama-era deal, but also introducing secondary sanctions aimed at foreign companies doing business with Iran. The result was economic isolation on a global scale. Iran's currency plummeted, inflation soared, and the country faced deep recession. Alongside economic pressure, Trump used targeted military posturing. He authorized the deployment of more troops to the region, conducted show-of-force flyovers, and increased naval presence in the Persian Gulf. The most striking example of this posture was the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in January 2020, which sent a clear message that provocations would not go unanswered. This act, while praised by some as a deterrent, brought the two nations to the brink of open conflict. Critics of the maximum pressure campaign argued that it increased tensions without achieving meaningful concessions from Iran, which resumed parts of its nuclear program in defiance. Supporters, however, claimed it severely weakened Iran's economy and limited its ability to fund regional proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis. This legacy has shaped the way any future action, such as a retaliation for an attack on a U.S. base in Qatar, would be interpreted. Observers expect that Trump, true to his doctrine, would likely respond not with negotiation as a first step, but with escalated pressure, continuing the precedent he set during his first term. The U.S. military presence in Qatar, particularly centered around Al Udeid Air Base, represents one of the most strategic footholds for American forces in the Middle East. Built in the 1990s and heavily expanded after the 9/11 attacks, Al Udeid serves as the forward headquarters of U.S. Central Command CENTCOM, which oversees operations across the region, including Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and the Persian Gulf. This base is not just a military installation. It is a nerve center for air command, intelligence gathering, surveillance, and rapid deployment. Housing over 10,000 U.S. troops, its importance cannot be overstated in any regional conflict scenario. Its strategic value lies in both its location and capability. Geographically, Qatar is positioned within striking distance of multiple key areas of interest in the Middle East. From Al Udeid, U.S. bombers, drones, and reconnaissance aircraft can reach conflict zones within hours. The base also plays a crucial logistical role, serving as a refueling hub and coordination center for coalition forces. In any potential conflict involving Iran, the U.S. would almost certainly rely on Al Udeid for operations, ranging from missile strikes to electronic warfare. An Iranian strike on this air base would be a bold and dangerous escalation. It would not be seen merely as an attack on a regional ally or a military installation. it would be interpreted as a direct assault on American military infrastructure. Such a move would immediately elevate the conflict to a more serious level, inviting strong military and political responses. The symbolism of striking Al-Udeid carries a message. Iran would be signaling its willingness to confront U.S. power projection capabilities in the region head-on. The presence of this base also complicates regional diplomacy. While Qatar maintains a relatively neutral foreign policy, hosting both a strong U.S. presence and maintaining lines of communication with Iran, any attack on its soil places it in a precarious position. The implications for regional alliances are serious, especially with nearby countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE closely watching for signs of U.S. resolve or restraint. Al-Udeid is more than a military outpost. It is a strategic asset and a symbol of American dominance in the Middle East. Any threat to it is a direct challenge, not only to U.S. power, but also to the existing balance of regional security and deterrence. Public and political pressure plays a significant role in shaping Donald Trump's decisions, particularly in matters of national security and foreign policy. Unlike traditional presidents who often relied on classified briefings and expert consensus, Trump demonstrated a unique tendency to gauge public mood and respond swiftly to media narratives, especially those circulated through conservative platforms and social media. This tendency creates a dynamic where major decisions, such as retaliating against Iran for attacking a U.S. airbase, are not only about military strategy, but also about managing public perception, maintaining a tough image, and satisfying his political base. Trump has historically portrayed himself as a leader who projects strength, and that image resonates with many of his core supporters. These constituents often expect immediate and bold responses to threats against American interests. An attack on a U.S. military base, particularly in a vital region like the Gulf, would be viewed by this audience as a challenge to national pride and security. In such moments, the expectation is not cautious diplomacy but decisive action, ideally one that is visible and easily understood by the public. That expectation generates a form of political pressure that can override more cautious voices within military or diplomatic circles. Conservative media figures and outlets that support Trump often amplify calls for a strong response, framing it as a matter of leadership and deterrence. Their narratives can influence both public sentiment and the president's own thinking. In past instances, Trump has responded to cable news coverage and public outcry almost in real time, using platforms like Twitter to communicate his stance before formal channels even respond. This feedback loop between public opinion, media coverage, and presidential action creates a political environment where inaction is often equated with weakness. Beyond his base, Trump is also sensitive to broader nationalistic sentiments, especially during periods of high visibility such as election seasons or public crises. A foreign attack on U.S. assets could easily become a rallying point, giving him an opportunity to reinforce themes of patriotism, strength, and America first leadership. Political rivals, on the other hand, might frame a weak response as evidence of failed leadership, increasing pressure to act boldly. In this context, Trump's decision-making becomes not just a matter of geopolitical calculation, but a performance on the global stage where perception drives policy as much as strategy does. Donald Trump's historical pattern of response to Iranian provocations reveals a consistent reliance on a mix of unpredictable moves, escalatory tactics, and high-profile actions designed to both shock and deter. Throughout his presidency, Trump often bypassed prolonged diplomatic negotiations in favor of swift, impactful decisions that sent a clear signal of strength. These responses, while controversial, followed a discernible pattern rooted in the belief that deterrence works best when the opponent fears disproportionate retaliation and cannot predict the exact form it might take. One of the most defining moments of this pattern came in January 2020, when Trump authorized a drone strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani near Baghdad International Airport. The The decision marked a major escalation in U.S. Iran tensions and demonstrated Trump's willingness to target high-value figures in response to perceived threats or attacks on American personnel. The strike was a direct retaliation for what U.S. intelligence described as imminent threats to American assets and a response to earlier Iranian-backed attacks on American facilities and contractors in Iraq. It bypassed traditional red lines and forced Iran to respond carefully, even while vowing revenge. Trump also used cyber capabilities against Iran in the wake of incidents such as attacks on oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz and the downing of a U.S. surveillance drone. Instead of full-scale military strikes, he at times opted for precision cyberattacks that disrupted Iranian missile systems or command infrastructure. These digital responses allowed him to maintain a posture of strength while avoiding broader war, highlighting another dimension of his asymmetric approach. His broader use of economic warfare, particularly maximum sanctions, was often deployed in conjunction with or as a follow-up to kinetic or covert action. These measures not only inflicted financial damage but served to frame Iran as an aggressor in the global arena, isolating it further from the international community. Trump's decision-making during these provocations frequently involved a high level of theatrics and public messaging. He made announcements via social media, used press conferences to project resolve, and often tied military decisions to broader themes of American dominance and defense of sovereignty. His responses weren't always consistent in scale, but were almost always consistent in tone, bold, punitive, and heavily personalized, designed to show that the United States under his leadership would not tolerate defiance without consequence. Donald Trump's foreign policy decisions, especially during times of heightened tension, have often been influenced by the political calendar, particularly when re-election or public approval is at stake. His instinctive understanding of media cycles and voter behavior means that his actions in response to global events frequently intersect with domestic political strategy. When a major international incident occurs, such as an Iranian attack on a U.S. airbase, Trump tends to frame his response not only in terms of national security, but also in a way that reinforces his political image and electoral goals. During his first term, Trump consistently used foreign policy crises to craft a narrative of strength and decisiveness, appealing to his core base of voters who favored a tough-on-enemies stance. In an election cycle, such an incident becomes more than a military or diplomatic concern. It becomes political ammunition. Responding forcefully to a perceived threat allows him to appear as a strong leader, unafraid to act and willing to defend American interests, a contrast he often draws against political opponents whom he labels as weak or indecisive. For Trump, optics play a crucial role. A retaliatory strike, a dramatic press briefing, or a televised address can all serve to reinforce a narrative of American strength under his leadership. These moves are often calculated to dominate news cycles, energize supporters, and distract from domestic criticism or controversies. His public messaging during these moments typically ties foreign conflict to national pride, military honor, and American exceptionalism, themes that resonate strongly with his political base. Even his decisions to show restraint are often framed as acts of calculated wisdom, suggesting that he has the discipline to avoid unnecessary wars while still being feared by adversaries. This dual image, both unpredictable and strategically rational, is part of the brand he cultivates during election seasons. The line between national security policy and campaign messaging becomes increasingly blurred, especially when his political future is on the line. Iran in this context is more than just a geopolitical adversary. It becomes a foil through which Trump can project leadership. His next move after an attack on U.S. forces would likely be shaped not only by military advice but also by polling data, media coverage, and the potential to solidify voter confidence. In Trump's political world, every foreign confrontation is also a domestic opportunity. Any retaliation by the United States in response to an Iranian attack on a military base in Qatar would carry significant geopolitical consequences. And Donald Trump, known for his unconventional yet high-stakes foreign policy style, would be navigating a minefield of regional and international complexities. The Middle East is a tightly interwoven web of alliances, rivalries, and long-standing sectarian divides, meaning that any aggressive action from the U.S. could provoke ripple effects across multiple nations. Trump's decisions in this scenario would not just be about punishing Iran, but managing the broader balance of power in the region. An attack on U.S. forces in Qatar implicates not only American interests, but also those of regional allies such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Israel. These nations, while often supportive of strong action against Iran, also have their own internal pressures and strategic calculations. A sharp U.S. military response could trigger retaliatory actions by Iranian-backed militias across Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen, escalating instability and forcing U.S. allies into reactive positions. Trump would be aware that even a limited strike could spiral into a larger regional conflict, potentially dragging multiple countries into a proxy war with unpredictable consequences. Additionally, U.S. bases in the region are surrounded by populations and governments that may not fully support an American-led confrontation. Qatar, while hosting U.S. forces, maintains a careful diplomatic balance and has worked to avoid being drawn too deeply into U.S.-Iranian hostility. A U.S. retaliatory strike launched from Qatari soil could strain Doha's relationships both with Washington and Tehran, complicating regional diplomacy and long-term basing agreements. Trump would need to weigh the importance of appearing strong against the risk of undermining key host nation relationships. At the international level, NATO allies and global powers like Russia and China would closely monitor Trump's response. A heavy-handed military campaign could alienate European partners who have historically pushed for diplomacy over confrontation with Iran. Meanwhile, rivals like Russia could exploit the chaos to expand influence in Syria, Iraq, or even the Gulf itself. Trump's past actions show he values the appearance of decisiveness, but he also calculates moves based on potential international backlash and economic fallout, including energy markets and trade routes that could be disrupted by war in the Gulf. This makes the next move not only a military or political decision, but a deeply consequential act with worldwide stakes. The world stands at a crossroads once again. With tensions rising after an Iranian strike on a U.S. airbase in Qatar, all eyes turn to a leader known for unpredictable strength, high-stakes moves, and a relentless drive to project dominance. Each of the forces at play, his past policies, the strategic value of U.S. military presence, public pressure, personal legacy, electoral timing, and the fragile geopolitical balance converge into a single fateful question: what will he do next? Whatever that answer may be, it will echo far beyond one man's decision. It will shape alliances, provoke reactions, and signal to the world what America under his command is prepared to do when challenged. Thank you for listening, and may wisdom guide every step forward. Good luck, and may peace, however distant it may seem, remain the ultimate goal.